After nearly waiting 10 years, Five Nights at Freddy's finally made it to the big screen, crushing expectations and making back almost 12 times its budget. It made no sense to stop making sequels, especially given how gigantic the franchise is. However, many critics weren't vibing with the movie very well, and even fans were dissatisfied with the movie's tone, sometimes calling it silly or not scary enough. With Scott recognizing the criticisms and reworking the script, I began to wonder, what should be the foundation for the Five Nights at Freddy's sequel? The Five Nights at Freddy's timeline is notoriously convoluted, and if the next entry for the movie does follow the same footsteps as its video game counterpart, we're going to have some problems. To start off, the ending in this movie is a great setup for the sequel. If the movie takes place in the past, you need to introduce a whole new set of characters while also keeping some familiar faces. For context, the events of the second game takes place in 1987 while the movie takes place in the 2000s. Mike isn't the security guard in the second game, it's Jeremy Fitzgerald. And not only that, that would also mean we would need to go back at least 10 years before the events of the first movie, forcing Abby out of the picture as she might not even be born. The only reoccurring characters that can stick around can be William Afton and a young Vanessa. But all I'm trying to say is that the earthquake that occurred while the Springlock scene happened can justify why there's a new Freddy Fazbear's Pizza establishment along with the withered animatronics. Picture this, a huge Freddy Fazbear fan wants to revive the franchise. In order to do so, they decide to do a complete overhaul. This time, it includes the toy animatronics with their facial recognition capabilities and everything. So, now we established that the sequel should move forward and not travel back into the past. What's the next step? One of the weirdest things in the movie is how Mike gets through nights 1 and 2 effortlessly. Not only does this diminish the animatronics' hostility in the final act, but it also hurts the movie's tone. The beginning of the movie is fantastic as it does recreate that dread and horror of trying to fend off the animatronics away. The door banging, the power going out, and hearing Foxy's mumbling his tune is literally the first game in movie form. It doesn't mean the audience should watch Mike stare at a screen for 2 hours straight. All the film needs to do is just harness what made the games iconic in the first place. So, how do we incorporate this in the next movie? Just take what they made the first 5 minutes work and further expand on it. Have the security guard, let it be Mike or Jeremy, not know what's going on and force them to actually fulfill the security guard role. For Mike's case, he would use his past experience to fend off the new toy animatronics when really it's the exact opposite due to how advanced they are. Another big thing that wasn't really in the movie was their characteristics. The way how Freddy acts in the first game is very sneaky and a bit passive. Withered Foxy is often aggressive in the second game as you have to constantly flash the lights at him to fend him off. Springtrap, the only real threat in the third game, knows how to hide his surroundings considering the person who's in the suit. In the game, these initial nights are very important to set up the players for what to expect from here on out, and it's up to them to adapt their skills. The sequel should echo this, allowing the audience to follow their protagonist and get connected towards their journey. Once the gameplay aspect is properly in the movie, the next step is creating horror, which the movie was lacking.
Oh god, he's gonna kill me! What do I do? Oh no, no!
FNAF's true horror is built off on psychological horror coming from the fear of the unknown. While there is nothing wrong with gore or loud jump scares, the horror genre is more than that. This is further illustrated when you add that phobia along with the creepy ambience and fantastic sound design. Scruffy has 2 amazing videos regarding how Scott uses ambience and sound effects to make the game feel more horrifying than it actually is. A fantastic example comes to mind is from Jordan Peele's Nope, a horror movie that focuses on 2 siblings trying to get footage of a UFO. Now how is that horror? Let's take a quick look at this scene right here. OJ, played by Daniel Kaluuya, walks into his barn after seeing the lights turn on. After turning off the lights, we assume that everything is alright. But this is a Jordan Peele movie. Do you really think that's it? We hear this sound again, causing the audience to get confused. Wasn't that sound coming from the sprinkler? The shadow of the aliens perfectly blend with their surroundings, and once it's revealed, it causes the audience to react. Watching this for the first time, I vividly gasped because not only is it my worst fear, but of how easy it was for my eyes to not catch them right away. Another scene in the movie comes from the UFO eating up park goers. There's a ton of buildup that happens here, but what we're going to primarily focus here is from this point on forward. While it doesn't literally show any blood or gore, this scene alone is horrifying. I absolutely adore this scene. We'll be using the point I made earlier about the importance of sound design and how it'll help guide our approach to dissect this on why this is in fact horrifying. First off, the build-up. In this movie, we learn about Steven Yeun's character, Jupe Park, who was using the UFO as a way to draw attention into his theme park. He uses OJ's horses as food for the aliens, but based on the previous night's accident, there is a horse blocking the insides. This immediately pisses off the aliens, and it looks towards the human crowd. Listen to how loud the UFO is. Everyone is caught off guard by this. Even Jupe gets a bit frightened by how early the alien shows up.
Stay in your seats. This is new. They're early.
Earlier in the movie, Peel tells the audience when a UFO is nearby, and that is when any electronic device turns off.
The Star Lasso Experience.
We hear nothing. Jupe is looking up. No, everyone is looking up. But as the wind picks up, we could barely see two young children get picked up by the UFO. Soon after that, everyone starts screaming. The sound picks up more and more and more before cutting to black. Then, we see the inside of the ship before going into whatever this is. What's so fascinating about this sequence is how the ship is almost alive. The way it's pushing people around sounds like balloons rubbing against each other, and you can still hear people screaming in the background. Grabbing the elements of the barn and theme park scene in Nope, the sequel should echo this by combining both in order to truly bring out the scares for the audience. Ever since Security Breach was released, a lot of people seem to compare how tame the series has gotten compared to the VHS tapes. While I respect the craftsmanship gone into making these videos, shout out to Valix, the entire genre has become a character of itself and lost the charm of what made it interesting in the first place. What the film should embrace on is that tension and psychological horror it's well known for. Alfred Hitchcock has a famous example of how tension should be properly laid out. If the audience watched two people talk during dinner and a bomb went off, the reaction would only last for a moment. But if the audience knows that there's a bomb underneath the table and the characters don't, the suspense grows with each second passing by. The tension itself comes from the audience not knowing exactly when the bomb would go off. Let's try to recreate the scenario with the missing kids accident. Because the film's 16-bit intro showed who murdered them, we are anticipating the actual murder taking place. We see a party going on at the pizzeria and know that the 5 group of kids that are near the stage are the same kids that are in Mike's dream. Let's call this group the character talking at the dinner table. As the party continues to unfold, something moves behind a door that catches the attention of a child. The yellow rabbit slowly emerges from the shadow, acting as the bomb underneath the table. The audience is on edge, anticipating the moment of reckoning. Afton reaches closer to the child, but the scene shifts back to the other kids cheering for Freddy and the gang. Next thing we know, the child is gone, nowhere to be seen. We then cut to one of the hallways where Afton brings the kid to the parts and service room. And then Whoa. Wait a minute, I thought we weren't going into the past. Isn't this supposed to be taking in present day? Yeah, there's this thing called
We are only making this for fans of Five Nights at Freddy's. If other people want to see it, that's fine with us. We're very happy. But we're not trying to expand the audience. We're trying to keep the fans thrilled.
Thanks, Jason, but this is a double-edged sword for everyone. Just because a film is for fans doesn't mean you toss out the effort in making the story work. There has been a lot of talk about how this film isn't made for casuals, and they're painting this as a good thing.
We wanted to make sure we were doing the fan base justice in every decision that we made along the way.
And I think one of the exciting things is that we are making this movie for them.
When you gatekeep something that is iconic as FNAF from the general audience, you are preventing people who want to get invested with it. Let's start off again with the 8-bit minigame sequence at the beginning of the film. See, the only reason this worked in the games was because the mystery was unfolding gradually, whereas the films should take the opportunity to vividly show the horrific actions that Afton did towards the children. It's almost like Scott forgot the rule of show don't tell, because it is completely thrown out of the window multiple times as present in Vanessa's expository moments.
What happened to them?
It was big news. Their spring locks, they're on all the older models. It's not just their ghosts that are inside of those machines. It's their bodies.
Here's a question. What propelled the game into the spotlight? Better question actually, what was MatPat's first theory even about?
Haunting you every night with the phrase, "It's me, it's me." It is you. You are the killer. The nightmare is also why everything is so surreal. Posters switching at random, heads on the animatronics glitching, Golden Freddy appearing and disappearing at will, taunting you as the one that got away. It's also why you're only...
The missing kids accident was never mentioned besides the newspaper clippings. Because of how rare it was to even get them, the traction towards the game grew more and more. There were puzzle pieces that the community could piece together. So, how do we fix this? Flashbacks. There's a ton of footage here that features the pizzeria back in its heyday, and the most striking content that was cut was Mike discovering a news station covering the accidents.
Tragedy tonight at a local pizzeria where 5 children who were attending a birthday event suddenly and mysteriously vanished into thin air. Let's head inside for more.
If you want your audience to feel afraid of William Afton, you gotta go back in time and showcase how he was able to kill the kids without raising any suspicion. Again, as previously stated, gore isn't needed here. The emphasis should be on psychological horror. The flashbacks could also explain Vanessa and Afton's relationship. In fact, Vanessa's entire character in the movie is way more fleshed out than how she is in the games because of that personal connection, whereas in the games, she just gets brainwashed by the killer's AI coding. The flashback should be able to further expand and explain what was happening in the past without having someone explain the information as if they were 5-year-olds. With all this in mind, it's important to note that Scott probably already planned out the trilogy. What I introduce here may not be in the final product, but what does give me hope is that he's aware of the backlash and takes feedback very seriously. This is the same guy who took criticism from FNAF 3 from being boring and turning FNAF 4 into something worth remembering for. Right now, there are reports that the script is being reworked. We're already seeing stuff for both the toy and withered animatronics. It's only a matter of time for the writers, including Scott, to actually make the sequel have a better story along with great scares. But with that in mind, I just hope the next one is great because if Sonic can do it, then so can FNAF.